This morning's session was the first of 8 graduation ceremonies to be held at the university. Accepting awards were students of education, music and health sciences. They are among 2,650 students who in the next week will be presented with what for many has been a lifetime goal. Among those at this morning's ceremony, Newcastle-born dancer Marilyn Jones. She was presented with the university's first honorary doctorate of music. Marilyn is one of Australia's best-known prima ballerinas. When she was 15 years old, she left Newcastle to dance with the Royal Ballet Company at Covent Garden. She returned to become the prima ballerina of the Australian Ballet Company and later took over as artistic director. She's performing now at the Opera House in a ballet choreographed by her son. While Marilyn has travelled the world and been admired by so many, she says this morning's ceremony rated among the most important in her life.
Oh, I think it's probably one of the greatest honours I could be given. I'm really thrilled about it. And I think because it comes from Newcastle, there's something special.
In Central North this weekend, one of the highlights of the round will be the inter-town battle between Tamworth Pirates and Tamworth City. In other matches, Gunnedah take on Corindai, Barraba play Moree, Walker are at home to City Jets and Inverell plays Narrabri. In the New England zone, Armidale City takes on Old Boys and Glen Innes plays Guyra. In Rugby League, the match of the round in Group 19 is tipped to be the clash between Inverell and Moree. In other games, YCW plays Glen Innes, Tenterville take on Guyra and Uralla is at home to Armidale. The second round of the Group 4 competition will see Narrabri play Werris Creek at home, Gunnedah play Weewaw and North and West Tamworth clash at Jack Wollaston Oval.
As soldiers of the Long Tan platoon marched out after their 3-month basic training course, builders prepared to move in. Contracts have been let and the groundwork should begin within the next couple of weeks on the first stage of a planned $90 million upgrade of the base. Old barracks and ablutions blocks will make way for new living quarters, equipment and teaching centres. Today's parade also saw the passing out of the Army's SLR, or self-loading rifle, after 30 years faithful service. It will be replaced by the Steyr. The weapon can be used in conjunction with laser beams and contact sensors that provide soldiers and their commanders with the closest possible simulation of combat conditions and a database recall of every shot fired in an exercise. To conclude the marching out ceremony, soldiers and local dignitaries planted pines in remembrance of fallen Anzacs and the continuing presence of the camp, which generates spending in excess of $80 million a year within the Shire.
Eight months ago, it was champagne time as the Toronto Workers' Scorpions broke a 34-year-old drought to win their first flag. With full justification, the celebrations went on for weeks. Some feel that they still might be in full flight. After 3 matches, the Scorps are winless, conceding 80 points while scoring only 24. What's happened?
Our attitude hasn't been that positive to start the season. We've had 3 defeats out of 3 and we've just got to knuckle down and get back to the basics of the game and get a few wins under our belt.
Last week, Toronto were belted by losing grand finalist Western Suburbs, but the Rosellas coach Neil Baker has a warning.
To look at Toronto on the bottom of the ladder, with all the players they've got there, I'm very surprised. But, I'd rather see them there than up the top because they've got an exceptionally good side, and as soon as they get it together, they're going to worry the hell out of everybody.
And Mal Graham has no doubt the green and golds will be back.
We've got to bounce back, there's no doubt about that at all. We need to win at this stage of the season. We cannot slip too far behind the leaders. We're too good a side to suffer any more defeats, so we'll bounce back.
Neil Baker has West on top of the ladder, but says this is the final year as a player for him and he wants to close with a premiership.
It's been a great start, but as you said, it's important for me because this would definitely be my last year of football. To go out in a winning note's always what you want, but mate, the players have put it together so well in the first 3 games, I couldn't wish for a better start.
GrainCorp admits it's been tough in recent years, and 2 years ago the government set the wheels of private enterprise into motion, corporatising the facility. In Newcastle, staff numbers were radically trimmed from more than 100 to just 37.
That 37 staff complement is a much more efficient, a much more highly trained unit than they used to be.
According to Stephen Riley, jobs will be safe with the sale. The Prime Wheat Association, which has 8,000 grain grower members, will pay between $90 and $110 million for GrainCorp, paying it off over 20 years.
Means for the first time, the industry, grains industry in this state, is able to take control and ownership of some of its assets.
The changes to GrainCorp were the first on the Greiner government's privatisation hit list. It's believed the new look will add bite to the already deregulated domestic grain handling market, meaning more competitive working and storage costs.
It holds more than a century of military history within its walls and has million-dollar views of Newcastle. But what's to become of the old cottage on Shepherd's Hill? Newcastle City Council is currently searching for the answer. It's called for expressions of interest for leasing the cottage and doing it up in some way that keeps the heritage and attracts the tourists.
A lot of people out there with flair and ideas now come forward to tell us what they are and we can assess it then.
One of those with big ideas is the cottage's tenant of 4 years, Tony Steinbeck. After collecting all manner of memorabilia about the cottage and the nearby 100-year-old defence tunnels, he believes it could be used as a living museum.
Because there's that much you can see from here. It'd be very good if you could just stand there and show a picture of what you're looking at down the road.
The council has so far received 22 inquiries about the cottage and is accepting expressions of interest until the end of June. Scott Bevan, NBN News. Through the early morning fog emerged the USS Fletcher. The destroyer was greeted not by anti-nuclear protesters, but a legion of wives of some of the 400 sailors on board.
This is wonderful. Everyone's been very, very kind and very gracious and made us feel very welcome.
Not so welcome for the crew was the news of the violence that's tearing apart their homeland.
Since we've been out doing exercises with the Australian Navy for the last 10 days, we've been so busy we haven't been paying attention to the news reports. And when we pulled in, it was a complete shock to us that all this was happening in Los Angeles.
A world away from the war on the American streets, the Fletcher has been participating in war games with the Australian Navy. The visit to Newcastle is basically for rest and recreation, but the crew will be participating in 50th anniversary commemorations for the Battle of the Coral Sea tomorrow. And that's a symbol, according to Captain Mick McDonough, of the strong alliance between Australia and the US.
We've had just absolutely wonderful relations, Navy to Navy, with your fellas, going all the way back through World War II.
But the first engagement is a slam dunk affair. Tonight, a basketball team from the Fletcher will be taking on Newcastle State League side at the Broadmeadows Stadium.
We may not have the height of the Magic Johnsons, but we have the energy, and you'll see that.
19-year-old Newman, the current world amateur champ, wasn't even seeded going into this, the world's richest surfing event, but forced her way through to the final with an upset win over Florida's Lisa Anderson. In the other semi, Manly's Pam Burridge had the edge in wave selection and picked up enough points to knock out world number one Wendy Botha, hot favourite to win her fourth straight classic.
That's a better wave. Held up for a nice clean face on it.
The swell was up to 1.5 metres for the final, and Burridge's vast experience carried her to a handy early lead with some high-scoring waves.
Well, she's one of the most experienced competitors in the world.
Points are tallied for the best 4 waves during the 30-minute final, and Newman tried desperately to catch her opponent. But Burridge held her lead all the way, finishing just 2 points ahead.
This could seal it for Pam. It's a nice long left-hander.
Certainly has sealed it for her.
It was a great achievement for Newman to make the final, lifting her ranking from 17 to 10th in the world, while Burridge picked up a total of $20,000. Earlier, some upsets in the men's fourth round, Shane Herring knocking out former world champ Barton Lynch to move into the quarters.
Nice wave, Barton. Gets a bit of flow, gets a bit of rhythm.
The most impressive performance came from local hero Damien Hardman, who won his way through to tomorrow's quarter-final, beating Tony Ray. Hardman, the current world number one, now looks set to take out his second Coke Classic.
It's this little token that's the centre of the dispute. Trainers now must buy a token for 80 cents for each horse from the NJC office before they can gallop their steeds on the cinders and wood chip tracks. Today was D-Day, and 50 horses were worked before the gates were closed, prompting a hurried meeting between the two associations.
The Newcastle Jockey Club are staying firm with the the proposed charges, which is a reduction on the original proposals. We're not going to reduce our fees, but we are prepared to freeze them for 2 years.
With the Newcastle Jockey Club board standing firm, it's now up to the trainers to decide the next course of action at their meeting tomorrow morning at 11.
I've got to offer that to the trainers tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and if they accept it, well and good. If they don't, we'll have trouble here again on Wednesday.
What do you think the outcome will be when you go back to your members?
I don't think they'll accept it. They're pretty adamant. We're pretty unanimous. No one handed a token over this morning. They said there were 6 trainers bought tokens the other day. I think we've whittled it down a little bit. I don't think it was 6 trainers.
For the race club, season 1991-92 is shaping as a disaster.
It looked like losing in excess of $300,000 this year on the Broadmeadow track alone. We'll make a small profit in Cessnock, but we feel that each of the sectors within our club should be contributing towards getting us back onto a paying proposition again.
The training facility will be open tomorrow morning, but if the dispute is not solved by Wednesday, the shutters will go up and the gates locked. Talk of any militant action by the trainers has been quickly disputed.
There'll be no breaking down of fences. We will not be breaking the law in any way.
There are a lot of would-be if they could be bikers out there, and Bernie aims to earn a living by giving some of them a ride on the wild side. Local tourism officers, business people, aldermen and politicians are all for the idea.
The RTA's been brilliant, and the Stay Safe Committee's been good, all except for the Department of Transport, who just refused to make a decision.
The department has rules for buses, cars and ferries, but mention of a Harley with a sidecar so far defies definition in the safety regulations. Bernie has been after the appropriate accreditation for the past 10 months, while similar applications in Western Australia, Victoria and the Northern Territory have been approved and are now in business.
Oh, I'm not going to stop ever. No, I'll just keep going and going and going. Even if I have to go back on the dole, I'll keep fighting after I'm on the dole. This is just one thing I'm not going to let go of.
Bernie says that adding insult to the financial injury of not being able to recoup his capital outlays are suggestions from Sydney siders that he drop Newcastle from his company's name to promote a more attractive image.
People just don't know that this is the spot to come to. From here you can branch out to anywhere. You can go to the vineyards and you can go to Lake Macquarie and Port Stephens. It'd do no good if I was wearing a suit and was clean shaven and rode the Harley around, you know, it would lose half the impact, I think.
Many Australians have taken action to avoid the flu this winter. 1.5 million doses of the vaccine have been consumed by the public. But as the cold weather closes in, supplies of the serum have run out.
So over the last couple of weeks we've probably turned away 60 or 70 people because we just can't supply it.
This is a familiar story told by pharmacists across the country. The demand for the vaccine has intensified this year, probably due to fears of an outbreak of Beijing influenza. While few cases have been reported here, it claimed more than 50 lives in the United States last winter. The federal government has recently authorised CSL Limited to make another 200,000 doses of the vaccine. Dr. John Stevenson, Director of the Public Health Unit, says only those people who really need the vaccine should receive it.
It's probably unwise or undesirable for fairly healthy younger people to be seeking immunisation at this stage. I think it's much more important that we protect the older age group and those other people with weakened immune systems and chronic diseases.
New supplies of the vaccine should be available in 3 weeks. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
In the Kooragang industrial skyline, a new site is taking shape. But this silo, already 35 metres high, has another 20 metres to go, eclipsing the loaders that surround it.
It's one of the bigger silos in Australia, but what's unique about it is it's got 7 internal cells in it, which we think is the only one like that here in Australia.
100 contractors are working around the clock, pouring concrete to make the silo's walls. The $14 million structure is growing at 300 millimetres an hour, or 7 metres a day. By Saturday it will be complete, ready for use by the Australian Cement Group.
The cement will come by ship from Devonport in Tasmania. It'll then be pumped through steel pipelines into the top of the silo. From the silos extracted and fed into bulk road tankers for distribution to our customers in the area.
Students are renowned for their consumption of things canned and bottled. A look near the student union's rubbish bins is testament to that. In a bid to make something good out of the garbage, the student union has launched a recycling drive.
It's a system developed by the New South Wales Recycling Advisory Unit, and it uses colour-coded bins for all the recyclables, red for clear glass, yellow for aluminium cans and so on. And the idea is that students or staff who make use of the bins pre-sort their recyclables into the correct bins, and then it's taken away to central points for collection by contractors.
Recycling centres like this one have been set up in 10 places around the university. At this stage, it's one of the cheapest and most efficient methods of recycling.
There's no double sorting, no double handing, it's all pre-sorted by the user of the consumable.
So far, students have been very supportive, and local businesses have been encouraging too.
We've had great support from GTC Recycling, who handle all our glass collection, Wickham Industries for office paper, and Charlestown Scrap Metals for our cans. We've had a lot of support from the major can, glass and paper manufacturers in supplying materials for our launch today.
beneath the bedsheets, 2 broken legs. Numerous cuts and bruises and a gashed head. For son and mum, a sleepless night. Kim Gollidge haunted by those few moments as she drove through this intersection. Her only warning, a thump, as the car rolled over the 5-year-old.
I seen Trent's car, the back car door open and his car seat hanging out.
Quick action saved Trent. 5 men lifted the car off the boy. Only now is it sinking in just how lucky he was.
What I've been told from people that were behind me when it happened and from the police, they said they can't believe that he survived something like this.
Staff at Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital say Trent's stay will not be a long one. He should be back home in a week.
Shortland Electricity is one of 4 main suppliers of electricity in New South Wales. Like Prospect and Illawarra County Councils, Shortland is made up entirely of local government representatives. In announcing an inquiry into the operations of Prospect County Council, Planning and Energy Minister Robert Webster also put Illawarra and Shortland councils on notice.
I put Shortland and Illawarra on notice that we'll be looking very closely at their governance as well.
Chairman of Shortland Electricity, Dennis Nichols, says restructuring of the council has been underway since 1982 and significant improvements have been achieved.
The reductions in the customer staff ratio, the runs are clearly on the board. Our cost per customer, the runs again, are clearly on the board. The efficiencies that have been achieved have been returned to our customers by real reductions in electricity prices.
Like Prospect authorities, Mr Nichols sees no reason to change the management structure of the council.
The local government representation really allows the people to know and to have some contact with the members on the board, and I guess under a more corporatised structure that access would be somewhat limited.
The final event of Beef Week saw the streets of Taree crammed with people eager to catch a glimpse of some of the prize-winning beasts from this year's competition. Also taking part in the parade extravaganza, transport from another era and representatives from local clubs and schools. Perhaps the proudest participant of the cavalcade was David Wieback, this year's champion parader and partner, courtesy of the Schultz family. Beef Week's supreme exhibit was the Falkland edition Hereford bull, with many other breeds also on display, including the Japanese Wago, which sells for $30 a kilogram in Japan. Organisers of this year's Beef Week are hailing it as a success, but promising bigger and better things next year.
A regimental memorial was unveiled in the city, including all of the 800 names of the members of the regiment. Coffs Harbour was chosen as the site as it lies halfway between New South Wales and Queensland, the 2 states from which the members come. The 7th Division Cavalry served across the Middle East during the Second World War before being sent to New Guinea when the Japanese entered the fight. The 7th Division served in many a bloodied battle in Samamda, where 57 lost their lives and the entire regiment contracted tropical diseases. No other unit has been honoured in such a way, with today's dedication attracting diggers from all over the country.
The Falcons' defence was superb last night as they raced away to lead handsomely, with veteran Al Green in brilliant touch at the other end of the court. Dozier, Kuiper and Neil Turner were ably supported in defence by Grant Kruger as the Falcons continued to ride roughshod over the Hawks, who had no answer. Green was in everything at both ends of the court to help the Falcons lead by 22 points at one stage. Veteran Michael Johnson top-scored with 25 and sank some unbelievable three-pointers, while Skylab Neil Turner just continued to press home the advantage as the Falcons steamrolled their way to a 17-point victory. Today's racing was made up of two stages, the first a road race of varying distances, and late this afternoon a criterium around a 1.5 kilometre loop. Parramatta's Marianne Shaw dominated the women's events, winning the 40k road race and then backing up to snatch victory in the criterium. The men's road race for A-graders over 120k's was won by Olympic hopeful Adrian Nolan of Canberra, the current national junior road racing champion and the Oceanic junior champion in the same category. In the B-grade men's 80km road race, it was a win for Steve Williams. Tomorrow, the cyclists will complete the Manning Tour with a road race and a time trial, once again around the township of Wingham.
Mother of three, Sandra celebrated Mother's Day with her family after a glittering Motherhood Quest presentation ceremony in Sydney on Friday night. She's one of the Quest's top fundraisers, with the proceeds of golf days, dance-a-thons and bucket brigades going toward the development of the Tingara Centre at Valentine for hearing and visually impaired children. Almost half the funds raised in this year's Quest came from the Hunter.
One girl from Singleton, another one from Curry, a lass from the Central Coast and two of us here from in town. And I believe between the five of us we raised half the amount raised for the Motherhood Quest.
Also on the local honours list, Janine McMillan of Toukley with the best Mother's Day gift of all. The 2,910 gram or 6 pound 6 ounce Tina May was the first baby born in the area just after 2:30am at the Belmont Hospital. Father Troy and baby brother Joshua are pleased with the new arrival, as is Janine's mum.
I said to my mum, I hope, it wouldn't be funny if I had a Mother's Day baby, little girl, for Mother's Day. What a present.
Many took the opportunity to make it a family day, with the Averys in Maitland doing it in style. 150 relatives gathered around 79-year-old mother of 12, Olive.
The last synod meeting was held about 30 years ago. It was in Latin and only clergy attended. But times have changed. In an unprecedented step, parishioners in the area have been invited to participate in the decision-making process. Father Lennon spoke at the Parish Resource Centre in Taree this afternoon.
Our situation as Catholic Christians is called to be people of hope, and that part of our hope has to be incorporated in our willingness to change.
25,000 copies of discussion papers have been distributed to Catholics in the region. The synod meeting will take place in June.
The aim of the week is to improve the public's awareness of how the media operates. Each day, a member of the community will act as guest editor. Today, Alderman Laurie Beattie filled that position, his time spent learning how stories are researched and then written in the computer. Each guest editor is paid an editor's wage for their day's work, which is then donated to a charity of their choice. During the week, 25 primary schools will tour the premises, allowing them to get first-hand experience of how a newspaper is put together. Also planned are exhibitions of old and new equipment used in the printing process, plus a display of more than 200 of Australia's best press photos. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
From 6 tomorrow morning, all Newcastle's government buses will be out of action. Drivers will be in Sydney. Redfern Oval, the venue for a stop work meeting. More than 2,000 are expected to flex their industrial muscle. But Transport Minister Bruce Baird says time's up.
We have given them a deadline which was 2 months ahead of the time, saying we want to negotiate this deal, we want to lower our costs, we want to improve our productivity. It's up to you. And they simply have walked away, not prepared to negotiate one thing.
The government's reform package includes the axing of 56 jobs. Mr Baird says drivers are willing to go.
It really is the union leadership up there that is causing the problem. We understand the great majority of drivers understand the situation and want to be part of the reform process.
But those union leaders say the government's outburst is simply
an attempt to try and further intimidate our members into accepting STA's proposal at tomorrow's meeting in Sydney. I don't think it's going to be successful.
Mr Baird says privatisation does not mean change. Newcastle will have the same service, the same prices. The only thing that will be different will be the colour of the buses. The dispute could escalate with talk of national stoppages, but unions have made it clear they still want to talk.
We'd be putting a demand on the Minister that he meet with this union sometime later this week or early next week, whenever suits him.
The government today denied it already has a list of preferred tenders. Buses should be back on the road by 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News. The hospital says well-publicised funding problems have made John Hunter an unfashionable place to work, but that's not all.
Although there's apparent oversupply of doctors in Australia, they don't necessarily want to work in emergency departments or rural general practice. They're working in after-hours medical centres, they're working in general practice, and emergency departments are known as somewhat difficult places to work with long hours and fairly relentless workload.
And then there are those who abuse casualty, those cases which hardly qualify as an emergency.
Between 10 and 20% of people who attend emergency departments could be dealt with in general practice.
The hospital may well have to look overseas again to find its new recruits.
We never give up hope, no. We're actually running the advertisements in New Zealand because New Zealand graduates and New Zealand doctors can come into Australia.